Hello, viewers and subscribers. Welcome to Blackford's Art of Learning. During today's lesson, we will be focusing on part 3 of our lesson on evaluating arguments. Our standard that we will continue with is RI 7.8. So let's begin. Today's quote is, "A little progress each day adds up to big results," by Satya Nani. Let us look at today's anchor chart. How to evaluate an argument. Argument should be evaluated based on whether or not it is good, not whether or not you agree. It should be objective. We're going to use the acronym FELT, the fabric of good argument. So an argument should have fairness. Is it fair and balanced? Is it biased or too emotional? Evidence, is the evidence reliable and relevant? Logical, is the conclusion a logical result of the evidence? And tone, is the tone appropriate, too emotional, sarcastic, or serious? Okay, let's watch this video. It's a mini lesson breaking down arguments and claims. Please listen carefully.
I had one of those today when my brother wouldn't let me in the bathroom to get ready to identify an author's argument and their claim. All right, so let's look at our first word, which is argument. And you're like, oh, I know what an argument is. I had one of those today when my brother wouldn't let me in the bathroom to get ready for school. We're not talking about that kind of argument. For the purpose of arguments and claims, we are talking about when the author wants to convince you on their position. So they're either for or against a certain issue or subject. So let's say it was your birthday and you got, I don't know, $300 in birthday gifts, like $300 cash. And what you really want to do with your money is to buy like a brand name sweatshirt that costs $100. And your mom is like, absolutely not. You cannot spend that much money on a sweatshirt. I won't allow you to do it. And then you're like, but it's my money. I could do what I want to do with it. So what you might consider doing is writing a letter that convinces her that you should be able to spend your own money. So that would be an argument. When you're trying to convince somebody of your position, or when the author wants to convince you on their position. So with the sweatshirt, you're for spending your own money, and that's what your letter would be about. Claim would be your main point. So if we go back to the sweatshirt example, the main point would be the money was given to you, so you should be able to do what you want with it. So this is a statement that the author believes is true. And it must be a statement that can be argued. So if you think you can do what you want with your money, your adult might have a different perspective and they can argue that. So claims always need to be argued or could be argued. So arguments and claims are not just a subjective opinion. The opinion is also supported with evidence, facts, and data. So it's not just about what you want, you have to be able to back it up. But let's use some caution here, y'all. As a smart reader, you need to constantly evaluate the author's purpose and position. So you need to ask yourself, does the author include relevant information and evidence to support their claim? Does the author provide an opposing viewpoint? Is the author credible? Now, if you're looking at that kind of stuff and you're like, what is she talking about? Don't worry, I'm getting ready to define some of these vocabulary words to help you. The relevant evidence is what the author uses to support their claim. So these are facts, statistics, quotes, experts' opinions. So maybe you can, if we go back to the sweatshirt thing, you can find a quote from a financial advisor who says kids need to learn how to manage their own money. And that would be an expert quote to back up your claim. And it would be relevant evidence because it's coming from an expert, a financial expert. A counterclaim, on the other hand, is the opposite viewpoint of the author's claim. So it's what the other side would say. It is mentioned, so you're like, why would I bring up what the other person would say, what the other side would say? It is mentioned so the author can disprove it with stronger evidence that supports their claim. So it might be something like spending that type of money on a sweatshirt is frivolous, especially if you're going to outgrow it. That would be an opposite viewpoint. So signal words, so if you're reading and you're trying to find the opposite viewpoint, here's some words that will help you. So the opposing view is that, or some people think that, some people may say that, others may believe, fill in the blank. So whatever comes after these signal words is typically a counterclaim. So that's the opposite of what the author believes. And then after the counterclaim, we come in with a rebuttal. So that's when the author responds directly to the counterclaim. The author provides reasons why the counterclaim is not as strong as their claim. So here are signal words to let you know that a rebuttal is coming. They'll say something like, however, in contrast, even so, although. So we go back to the sweatshirt example. The rebuttal might be, even so, teenagers should be allowed to learn how to manage their money so when they are adults, they can make responsible decisions. Our final word that we need to look at is credible. We need to decide, is the author credible? Is the evidence that they're using credible? So what does that mean? It means that the author is able to be believed and trusted. So what we need to look for, we need to look at the author's credentials and their background, where the article was published, is it cited, and reliable evidence used to support the claim. So now that we have all of the vocabulary under our belts, let's look at how to analyze an author's arguments and claim. So this is if you're reading an article, what steps do we need to do to figure out the claims and to analyze it? So here's a broad overview. These are the components of argumentative writing. First, you have the claim, and it answers the question, what does the author think? Then you have the reasons why the author thinks this. And then finally, the evidence, and it's how the author supports their case. So step one is to identify the claim. So what you need to do is highlight the author's main point. And this is usually in the first paragraph. They'll tell you why they are writing this article or this paper. Then you need to ask yourself, is the claim clear? Is it reasonable? Does it make sense? But be careful. It is not a question of if you agree or disagree with the author. It's, can you pick out the claim? Can you pick out the author's main point? It doesn't matter if you agree or disagree with them. All right, step two, identify and analyze the evidence that the author uses. So what you're going to do is you're going to underline evidence that the author uses to support their claim. So again, this is facts, statistics, expert quotes that the author has included in their paper that makes their claim true. And then you need to ask yourself, is the evidence relevant? So does it match the claim? And is it credible? So does it have that backing that makes it strong? Or did they just find it off a blog post from 12 years ago? So after you do all that, you need to decide, did the author fully support their claim? Step three, Identify and analyze the counterclaim. So remember, counterclaim is what's the opposite viewpoint. So when you see the opposite viewpoint, you're going to write an X. That's a little signal for us to know that's the opposing viewpoint. And ask yourself, does the author acknowledge and address what the other side might say about their position? And then circle reasons and evidence the author provides in response to show their viewpoint is superior. So you're going to circle the rebuttal. Step 4, analyze the writing style. So pay attention to the techniques and elements that make the writing more convincing, persuasive, powerful. Now, not all arguments and claims articles have to be persuasive. Some are just factual. They're just giving you a side. Techniques that authors will use, they'll appeal to your emotions. They'll use like strong word choices, vivid language and imagery to create a mood. And then ask yourself, was the author persuasive or was it just more of a factual article? So one final note, it is up to you as a good reader to think through the impacts of the arguments to determine if the author was successful or not. Look at their claim, look at the evidence, look at the rebuttal, and then decide, were they successful? Not do you agree with them, but were they successful in outlining their argument?
Okay, boys and girls.
That is all we have for.
I hope you were listening carefully, and now we're going to share what we have learned. You can go ahead and pause the video so that we'll share out what we have learned from the video. All right, now we're going to participate in a quizzes game to review evaluating arguments. So once you click on the picture, you're going to type in the code that is being displayed once it's generated. All right, we're going to type in this code 836-500. Okay. All right, once everybody has joined, we'll start the game. Tom is in first place. Okay, let us continue our lesson. And we're going to be reading the text, The Case for the Wind Power. If you're using your iReady book, that's on page 176 to 178. And if you're using your computer, simply click on the link. And I'm going to use a cold call to identify someone to read for us today. And usually when I say cold call, students will respond cold call, and they are listening out to hear whose name will be called. So using a fictitious name, Mary. So Mary will read for us today. Read the persuasive essay about wind power, then answer the questions that follow. The Case for Wind Power by Scott Shears. And we know that wind power can be used to generate electricity, which is a cheaper way of generating electricity using this renewable energy, because wind is renewable. It has an endless supply. It will never run out. And it exists for free naturally. As the world's population grows, so does the need for energy resources. The fossil fuels we have long relied on are both destructive and finite. That means it's limited in nature. It's very limited. Burning coal, oil, and natural gas releases carbon into the air, trapping more of the sun's heat in our atmosphere. And mining of these resources is becoming more costly. Already it is becoming harder to reach the remaining resources, and eventually even those will run out. When the world's energy needs rise while its access to fuel falls, there will be a crisis, one only made worse by the effects of climate change. The most practical solution is to replace the harmful, limited fuels with ones that are safe and limitless. That is why the US government should fund the research and development of wind power and a clean and renewable resource. So we're going to highlight this part. This looks like a claim that the US government should fund research and development of wind power, a clean and renewable resource. And these efforts should begin now. The vast majority of the electricity we use come from power plants that run on fossil fuels. Burning these fuels turns the massive turbines that generate electricity. It also releases greenhouse gases into the air. These are gases that are very bad for the air, such as carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, hydrofluorocarbons. And these are the gases that help to cause global warming, making the earth become warmer because of this blanket of gas that is built up in the atmosphere. So these gases are considered to be a major contributor to global warming, as I said before. The steady rise in the average atmospheric temperature of the planet will eventually result in the melting of glacial ice, the rise of ocean levels, and the shifting of climates. Wind power, in contrast, produces electricity without pollution. Wind turbines look and act like a common pinwheel, only on a much larger scale. They can be as tall as 20-story building and have blades 200 feet long. The blades catch the wind, which turns a generator that produces electricity. This type of energy production burns no fuel, generates no emissions, and causes no harm to the environment. So this is a cleaner form of energy. Additionally, wind power is a renewable resource that will never run out. Okay, so renewable, it has an endless supply. It can easily be replenished because it exists naturally, like the sun, which gives us solar energy, the wind, which provides wind energy, and geothermal energy, which comes from the earth. These are all renewable sources of energy. So wind farms can stretch for hundreds of square miles and contain hundreds of individual turbines. A vast plain dotted with these elegant white machines is an impressive sight to behold. With additional government funding for research, turbine technology will become more efficient, producing more electricity with less wind power. Critics of wind power maintain that the infrastructure it requires is not feasible, meaning that it's not capable of being done or carried out. They might not think that they have the necessary resources to implement or to provide this infrastructure. So they are thinking it's not feasible. The wind power would not be feasible. Wind blows strongest in open areas where tall buildings cannot block the currents. So wind farms must be built far away from the urban areas that need the power most. So hundreds of miles of costly new transmission lines would be required to connect the wind farms to existing electrical storage facilities. Critics say this expense, in addition to building the farms in the first place, is too great for the government to support. But not every city needs to draw its wind power from so far away. In recent years, coastal cities such as Los Angeles, San Francisco, and New York City have considered constructing offshore wind farms. These cities require massive electrical resources, making wind power an attractive possibility. Wind blow harder offshore. Winds blow harder offshore, which can translate into more power. Also, offshore winds blow strongly during the afternoon hours when energy consumption is at its peak. Constructing offshore wind farms and new transmission lines will be expensive, but this investment will surely pay off in the long run. Over time, drilling and mining for oil and coal will become more costly, but wind power is always free. Another charge critics level is that wind power is unreliable. As they point out, the weather is unpredictable. Winds do not blow at consistent speeds, and sometimes they do not blow at all. In order to prevent power outages, backup power plants burning fossil fuels must be ready to kick in when the air is still. But backup power plants would only operate occasionally, contributing far less pollution than the ones in use today. And the development of storage batteries to build up power reserves to be used when winds are low would further reduce the use of fossil fuels. One such battery will be a part of a new wind power installation in Hawaii. Officials there plan to generate 70% of their state's power needs from renewable sources. Wind power is the most practical solution to our nation's power needs. It draws on the endless blowing of the wind, so it will never run out. It creates no pollution, so it will not foul the air or contribute to global warming. And as it replaces fossil fuel power, it will reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Our government can make this change happen more quickly by investing in wind power. It is time for America to face the future, and the undeniable part wind power will need to play. All right, so what statement best expresses the author's claim about wind power? What is the author's claim about wind power? So remember, we had highlighted a section that says the US government should fund the research and development of wind power, a clean and renewable resource. This looks like a claim that the author is making. So let's see. All right, let us check out the responses, and we're going to use a process of elimination. Let's look at A. Climate change can be reserved by switching from fossil fuels to wind power. Is that correct? So choice A is incorrect. The author doesn't claim that climate change can be reversed. So climate change can be reversed by switching from fossil fuels to wind power. Author did not state that. B, is B correct? Wind power is superior to fossil fuels because it is cheaper than drilling or mining. Is that correct? So B is incorrect. It does not include the author's claim about why the country should invest in wind power. Let's look at C. Wind power will be expensive to adopt and will not be a reliable energy source. So choice C is incorrect. It states the critics' claim. This was a claim made by somebody who is criticizing the use of wind power. All right, so we are left with D. The government should invest in wind power because it's clean and renewable. Yes, that's the claim that we mentioned at the beginning of the text. So let's go to number 2. Which sentence from the essay best supports the author's claim that wind power will reduce the release of greenhouse gases? So before we even look at the answers, how can wind power reduce greenhouse gases? Remember now, when you use wind power, you don't need to burn anything, and it doesn't give off any smog or any emissions, and it definitely doesn't affect the environment. So let us look. And that was also mentioned in the text. So let us see which one is the most suitable option. A, wind farms can stretch for hundreds of square miles and contain hundreds of individual turbines. Is A correct? A is incorrect. It states a fact about wind farm, but it doesn't relate to emissions or anything relating to the wind, anything relating to the environment and greenhouse gases. So that's incorrect. B, this type of energy production burns no fuel, generates no emissions, and causes no harm to the environment. That's definitely correct. But let us look at all the options to ensure that we're selecting the most suitable one. C, yes, over time, drilling and mining for oil and coal will become more costly, but wind power is always free. Is that correct? So that one is also incorrect because it only tells why wind power is most cost effective. Okay, so D, but backup power plants would only operate occasionally, contributing far less pollution than the one in use today. So choice D is also incorrect. Less use of backup power plants would reduce emissions, but it doesn't describe how the use of wind power impacts greenhouse gases. So our most suitable answer is B. Okay, let's do number 3. Which piece of evidence from the text is not relevant to the author's claim? Remember, the author's claim is that the government should invest in wind power or wind electricity. So which evidence is not relevant to that claim? Is it A, wind power in contrast produces electricity without pollution? So this option gives, this option seems to give a benefit of wind power. The benefit is that it produces electricity without pollution, but it does not support the claim. Okay. B, in addition, wind power is a renewable resource that will never run out. This also gives a benefit of wind power. A vast plain dotted with these elegant white machines is an impressive sight to behold. What do you think about C? So C, it doesn't explain why the government should invest in wind power. So this one seems irrelevant. While all of these A and B provides benefits that would support the government investing in wind power, C does not provide any support as to why the government should make this investment. So C seems to be not relevant to the author's claim. So let's leave that one and look at D. Constructing offshore wind farms and new transmission lines will be expensive, but it is an investment that will surely pay off in the long run. So this one also provides another benefit that the government would need to look into in order to provide wind power. So that one also supports the fact that the government can invest in wind power. So this one is out. So this one is the one that is not relevant to the author's claim. Okay. All right. Below are 3 claims that one could make based on the essay, The Case for Wind Power. Part A says, put an X by the claim that is supported by the most relevant and sufficient facts in the case of the wind power. Okay, so wind power is reliable. Wind power is affordable. So let us look at them. Wind power is ecological. So which one supports the claim in this essay, the case for the wind power? All right, so wind power is reliable. So we can recall from the text when the author made mention that the advances, the author says that advances will make wind power more reliable, but those advances have yet to be developed, right? So they have not developed all the infrastructure. Remember, they use the term infrastructure. They have not developed all the infrastructure that is required to ensure that the wind power is successfully implemented. Let's look at wind power is affordable. Based on the text, we know that this would, based on the text, it mentioned that wind power would prove to be very expensive based on the different resources that would have to be purchased. And the author explains that wind power will eventually be more affordable, but it currently requires significant investments in infrastructure. And this makes wind power more expensive than other fuels. So let's look at wind. So we already marked those out. So we can see that wind power is ecological would be the most suitable answer. And this is supported by the most relevant and sufficient facts in the essay. Okay. So they said put an X beside the one that supports the claim. All right, boys and girls, thank you for all your hard work. Okay, let's finish our written response before we go. It says, write a short paragraph with at least 3 details to show how the claim you chose in part A is supported by relevant and sufficient facts in the essay. So why is it ecological? So you can pause the video, go back to the text. So when we think about ecological, it has to do with relating to the environment, and the living things, and the relationship between the living things and the environment. So it's more ecological because it is more environmentally friendly. It won't produce any emissions. The wind power will not produce any emissions, any smog or smoke. So it will not affect the environment. It is a cleaner and safer form of energy. All right. So let's look at the 3 details to show how the claim wind power is ecological is supported by relevant evidence. So in the case for wind power, Scott Shears, the author, supports his claim that wind power is an ecological fuel source with relevant and sufficient facts. For example, by comparing wind power to fossil fuels, Shears states that wind power produces electricity without no pollution, right? So that's why it is ecological. There's no pollution, nothing that will affect the environment. He also indicates that unlike the burning of fossil fuels, wind power emits no greenhouse gases. Finally, he points out that drilling for oil damages the environment in ways that establishing wind farms does not. So let us record our response. Okay, boys and girls. Now you're going to work in your small groups to complete a argument and claim charts in regards to the case for wind power. So we're going to use this graphic organizer, and I'm going to provide you with the claim that the government should invest in wind power, and you'll have to provide evidence to support the claim. We'll go through this together in small groups. So you're going to work in your small groups, and I'll be working with a group at my table. And please remember the small group rules. There should be no interruption. No one should interrupt the teacher at the small group, and everyone needs to work quietly. Thank you for watching, and please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Again, please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you all for watching, and be on the lookout for other videos.